everyone. My name is Giselle. Welcome to our Everything Parkinson's webinar. We're glad to see everyone. Welcome to our 2024. This is our first for the year. Just a reminder for those of you that have um, missed us the last time. We're not doing the webinars monthly now. We're doing it every other month. So we're starting February today for this year, and then the next one is going to be in April. But we do have a very special guest today. Here at the webinar, we certainly want to talk about Parkinson's, the symptoms of Parkinson's, management, medications, but we definitely want to give you a little bit more insight too on other members of your team. And I think over the years, we've had brain health coaches on here. We've also had physical therapy. But today we're going to shift a little bit to a different member of your team for to help treat and manage the Parkinson's, and that is with an occupational therapist. So, how is this a little bit different from what you usually get a referral for, which is usually physical therapy? So, I think at the very basic level, the physical therapist is one that focuses more on um improving patient mobility and ability to move their bodies, whereas occupational therapy is geared towards more on performance of everyday activities of daily living. So with that, we have a very special guest today. She is a doctor of occupational therapy, who specializes with working with people with neurologic conditions like Parkinson's. She is trained in the lifestyle redesign approach to chronic conditions management from the University of Southern California, USC, and she currently works with Reactive, which is probably familiar to some of you already. Um, so she specializes in integrated interdisciplinary neurological care. Please welcome to our Everything Parkinson's webinar, Ms. Malia Sacco.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Can everyone hear me? Okay, good. Alrighty. Yeah, you covered a lot of what OT is, and we're actually going to start off with that today. And I can't see your faces, so if I am talking through things and someone has a question, you can raise your hand, or we're going to have plenty of time at the end too. So let me share my slides.
Just briefly, Sacco, Ms. Sacco. Is it okay if I call you Malia? Malia.
Of course, yes.
Yes.
Please, everybody,
So,
please call me
Malia,
Malia.
so we they can ask questions in the end. We do have a chat, and we can read them off the as we disabled the participation from the actual patients themselves. But we can we'll certainly read off questions after your talk.
Great. Okay. That's
Thank
good
you.
to know. I just want to make sure I'm not bulldozing over any questions.
You're
So,
good. Thank you.
let's see. So, thank you for that introduction. I have a little agenda for kind of what we'll go through today, and I want to kind of give everybody this information, and then we'll have a chance to ask more questions at the end. And if you want me to go back to anything, please let me know, because this is a really quick OT in a nutshell. But we're going to get a little bit more into what OT is and what to expect from OT. This might be a review for some of you. I then will introduce this more than zero strategy that I like to use with clients for habit development. And we'll take a main focus on some lifestyle factors like exercise, stress management, and sleep, because those I tend to see that show up a lot here at the clinic in my work with folks. And then I'll give quick little OT topics too, just to plant those seeds for any questions with that. Let's dig in. So Giselle did a great job with this, and I'll review a bit. OTs work with folks across the lifespan, from preemie babies through end-of-life care and everything in between. And we work with people to engage in their everyday activities in a more satisfying way. And I think something that can be really helpful is defining the word occupation like an OT would. It doesn't necessarily mean career. To an OT, an occupation is a meaningful activity that occupies your time. I'll give you some examples. They can be activities of daily living, like getting ready in the morning or winding down for the night, like brushing your teeth, washing your face. They can be activities that you engage in the home, like cleaning, like making a meal or a snack for yourself. They can be out of the home too. So grocery shopping, spending time with loved ones, working, volunteering. Health management and lifestyle, that's going to be a big focus of today, because that does take up a lot of our time, and it is meaningful, right? Our sleep, how we eat, how we exercise, especially, and how we live well with Parkinson's. A lot of folks say that sometimes living with Parkinson's can be like a full-time, if not overtime job. And I see that there's a lot to do, and my job is to help to make that easier, more consistent for folks. I like to think of this model as like looking into an OT's brain. This is a really common framework that we use as OTs in assessing and treating. It's called the Person Environment Occupation Model, PEO. And we analyze an activity, right? We analyze, okay, what factors is this person coming into this occupation with? What is this occupation demanding of this person? What is the environment like, whether it's the people surrounding them or the sensory environment, like the lighting, the sound, things like that. And we look at what is supporting this person's engagement, what's a barrier to that, and how can we adapt, right? That PEO model can be applied across the board in many different contexts. This is not a comprehensive list, but some of the more common types of OT and OT specialties that you might come across, and that I see being really helpful for living well with Parkinson's. And as I mentioned today, we're going to hit heavy on the lifestyle modifications, but I think we'll have some of these other ones sprinkled throughout as well. These are a couple other frameworks that I really like to use in my practice. You might be familiar with these. There's the Healthy Mind Platter from Dr. Dan Siegel. And it's kind of a play on the nutritional plate, right? How we need a certain amount of protein, carbs, and fats in our meal. This is a play on that, of looking at what we need for healthy brains and bodies, whether it's connecting with others, connecting with ourselves, letting our brain just wander and not really do much, playing, and then of course, sleeping, moving our bodies, and focus time. And I won't go too into depth with these, but this other one on the side are the 8 dimensions of wellness from SAMHSA. And I think this can be a nice, friendly audit of our life, and asking, am I getting what I want out of these areas? Am I participating in the way that I would like to in these areas? And that writing is kind of tiny, so we can come back to this if anybody wants to. So lifestyle. You've heard it from me a million times today. I'm sure you've heard it from many of your doctors and your therapists. It's one thing to know what we should be, could be, would be doing, and it's a whole nother thing to implement it, to make it consistent and to make it last. And I know that that's not easy, but I hope that there is something from today's presentation that sticks with you and gives you a strategy, a new way to approach habit development. And one of the ones that I mentioned earlier is more than zero. This is a phrase that I think came out of a client session years ago, and I still use it today. As we go through these lifestyle factors, I encourage you to think, okay, how can I do more than zero of this thing? So to give you an example, let's say you're working on building and walking into your routine. I can give you a personal example. I know sometimes I can get into a narrative of, well, if I can't do my full loop that I like to do, then it's not worth it at all. Or if I don't sweat a little, it's not worth it. Or it's raining if you're in LA or maybe other places too. So I just can't do my walk. And that's where we can really apply this. How can I do more than 0 walking today? Maybe it's I'm getting on my shoes and I'm walking in the hallway outside of my home. Maybe I am marching in place to some music. Maybe I'm walking down to the stop sign and back. So it's really getting a chance to see, okay, I might not hit my marks that I would like to, but how can I build on the consistency and say that I'm getting that dose every day or whatever your goal is? So we can definitely talk more about this, but this was one practical tool and kind of self problem solving strategy that I wanted to offer today. Some benefits of using this is it helps us be kinder to ourselves and give a little bit of wiggle room. Not every single day is the same, right? There's going to be a different schedule or routine. You might have fluctuating symptoms. It also helps us to listen to our bodies to avoid overdoing it and pushing ourselves past our limits, whether that's physically, cognitively, emotionally, socially. So let's start to apply it to different lifestyle areas. I want to start with physical activity because I know everyone has heard. I don't need to tell you how important physical activity is for living well with Parkinson's. I do want to just lay out some context here. We know that consistent, regular exercise, so not a dose of it, but that habit of it, can cause lasting brain changes, specifically for folks with Parkinson's. And exercise is not just for helping you move well, it's also to help with the non-motor symptoms like fatigue, pain, sleep challenges, depression, anxiety, just general challenges with coping with stress. Exercise can help across the board for those. And for aerobic activity is one of many types of exercise that can be beneficial for folks with Parkinson's. And there have been studies, this one included, that show that it can help to slow the disease progression. And when working with folks with PD, I know that can be one of the scariest parts, is just that it's a progressive condition and there's a lot of unknowns. And that is scary. And, I always want to validate that nobody likes unknowns, and it is scary. And we do know that one thing that we do have control over is to slow down the disease progression by engaging in these healthy habits. Again, easier said than done, but that's what your therapy team is here for. As I mentioned, team care, right? There was this really awesome study done, I think in Italy for PD, where folks got multidisciplinary care. So from, PT, OT, speech, psych, yoga therapy, that's not a comprehensive list, but from a team. And the folks who got support from a whole team of people didn't have to increase their medication dosage as much as the folks who didn't get that multidisciplinary care. So I think building your team is a really big part as well of slowing disease progression. And with all of that said, I know we've talked a little bit already about how hard it is to develop habits, but I really do like to remind my clients that it's even harder with Parkinson's. It's hard enough to say, this is how much I'd like to exercise, and then follow through with it for anybody of any age. And then sprinkle in Parkinson's, and that makes it harder because of the brain changes that can happen with Parkinson's. And I'm really speaking to the brain changes that can contribute to apathy, low motivation, trouble starting things, trouble finishing things. It's extra tough. And I think I say that to really validate, like, this is not a character flaw. This is not laziness. This is part of it, right? And I think that also helps to give permission to, get help and problem solve this. It's not, just simply that someone is lazy. I don't believe in that. I think there's a lot of reasons that can work against us when we're trying to set healthy habits. And this is a super quick in a nutshell slide, but some ways that OTs can help you with building these routines is one, just building the exercises with you. But we can also help to brainstorm and collaborate to identify new novel exercises that are fun and engaging for you. We can also work with you to create visual aids, accountability from others, self-accountability strategies to help keep you on track. And that's not to say, perfect every single day, but to give you the tools to stay on track and recognize when you're off track and come back to it. We're also really helpful in identifying what the just right challenge is. Sometimes that in itself can be a barrier to exercise. Either what we would typically do is too easy and it's not engaging and it's kind of boring, or it's too hard and we're not looking forward to it because it's not the just right challenge. And last but not least, we can also help with building other healthy habits that might be impacting your ability to engage in exercise. So things like staying hydrated, stabilizing your blood sugar regulation, maybe in help with a dietitian, managing fatigue, managing pain. So those are just some of the factors that can get in the way, either from Parkinson's or maybe other health conditions as well. So I have been yammering on, so let's take a moment to do a little bit of movement. This is a great example of more than zero, right? Doing 5 rounds of one of these exercises, right? So I have a plan for us, just a little bit of a movement break to practice what we're preaching today. First, we'll do a cat-cow yoga pose. I'll give you some modifications. And then we'll also do a power up from the power curriculum. So you're welcome to do this with me. You're welcome to not do it. And if anything doesn't feel great, then pause and stop. So for cat-cow, let's see, I might come this way. So you might come to a seat, maybe the edge of your seat. Option to do W arms like this, right? So as you inhale, squeezing your shoulder blades together, opening up across the chest, maybe looking up if that feels good in your neck. And as you exhale, press forward, round your back, chin to chest, to stretch out the back of your body. So again, inhaling, W arms, and exhaling, chin to chest, tailbone rolls under as you press forward. Let's do 2 more of those. Expanding with an inhale and pressing forward with exhale. Last one, just getting a little bit of movement in our spine. And back. Great. And then let's also do a power up. So some of you might be familiar with this curriculum already. This is one of my favorites for a quick boost to our posture and just movement. So you can find a wide base of support, bring your legs wider, and an option to keep your hands on your knees or reach down, kind of making a zigzag with your body, and power up with the widest wingspan that you can. So for example, I didn't get these angles just right, but it's like reaching down and powering up like this. So let's do 5 of those together. You can count out loud with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Awesome. So even if we just did one of those, that is a great example of just getting a short boost of exercise, of dopamine, of movement in our body. So feel free to do that throughout our webinar today. You don't need me to lead it, you've got it. So we'll take a little shift. I wanna make sure we have plenty of time for questions after, but let's switch gears to stress management. One of the big reasons why I wanted to include this today is because these numbers. A lot of folks with Parkinson's will share either changes to their stress, maybe feelings of depression and anxiety, either worse than before, or maybe they didn't really have any trouble with mood and stress and now they are. And that can be for a number of reasons. It can be because of the changes that are happening in our brain. It can also just be that it's stressful to live with a neurological condition. And it can be totally unrelated to health as well. Life can be stressful and a lot. And a big reason why I like to touch on this is because stress can impact Parkinson's symptoms. So it's kind of like a bi-directional arrow. Stress can make Parkinson's symptoms worse. Worsened symptoms can be stressful. So we can get in this loop with stress amplifying symptoms and back and forth. Some short and sweet things to consider with how OTs can help you. We love to collaborate. So if you already have a psychologist, a therapist on your team, we can collaborate your care with ours. We can help with improving awareness and insight. Speaking from personal experience, it's very easy to breeze past just the subtle whispers of stress, right? Not so much the intense feelings of overwhelm and stress, but just the little signs throughout the day, the daily hassles, right? So we can help with awareness building, but we can also help with action. So strategies, learning how to integrate it into your routine, sometimes with that more than zero approach. We also like to look at different sensory strategies. We can, if anyone's interested in learning more about that, we can definitely chat more. But sensory strategies can have the effect of calming us when we need that, or energizing us and stimulating us when we need that. And I want to do another experiential. This is a chance to just take a breathing break. So if you have a favorite technique that you enjoy, please go ahead and do that, or anything else that would feel good right now. And for those of you who want a technique, I'd love to offer one of my favorites. When we are looking to calm the nervous system, slowing down the breath is the name of the game. So a deep breath is great, but a slow breath is even better. And one way to slow down the breath for, let's say, the inhale is to imagine one of your favorite smells. And some of my folks who I'm working with Parkinson's, their smell has been impacted. So sometimes we like to think about maybe a favorite smell that they can smell right now, or a really nostalgic favorite smell from a past experience. So you can imagine that. When we smell something good, we naturally slow down that inhale. And for the exhale, pursed lip exhale is a really nice way to slow down that exhale. So you can imagine like you're cooling off soup or blowing out a ton of candles, right? So if you'd like to, I can cue it. Everybody will be at a different rate though, so do whatever feels best for you. But we can start with an inhale, imagining your favorite smell. Maybe a pause at the top as you exhale with pursed lips, all the way to the end of the exhale. So you can continue that cycle, inhaling a favorite smell and exhaling your cooling off soup, all the way to the bottom. Let's do one more. Great. And there are so many different kinds of breathing techniques. So if you love that one, awesome, take it. If you don't, we could definitely chat about it at the end of today, or you can talk about it with your therapist. I think, and any therapist, I think we all bring in breathing techniques because it's just so important to be able to regulate our nervous system for many, many reasons. I'm going to switch us over to sleep. So sleep, I'm sure as many of you have looked into, sleep can be really impacted by Parkinson's for many reasons, again, with brain changes, but also just secondary things that can happen along with Parkinson's. These are some, not all, of the things that can be experienced. And I know with our definition of occupation, it's a meaningful activity that occupies our time. And to an OT, sleep is an activity, right? I think we all find sleep to be meaningful, something that we want to be able to engage in well. So OTs can work with you one-on-one to come up with an individualized plan that works for you and your preferences to wind down for the day, working on sleep timing and the timing of when you wake in the morning. We can also help with when you're having trouble falling back asleep at night too, if that's an issue. Some sleep interventions are in what we do during the day, right? Reducing daytime napping or daytime activities in bed, like reading or watching TV. We can also help with increasing your activity during the day, whether it's physical activity, cognitive activity, because we know that that increases your sleep pressure, which is basically increasing your sleepiness. So we're never looking for exhaustion at the end of the day, but more so, have I done enough physically, cognitively, socially, emotionally to be adequately tired to fall asleep and stay asleep? And that's the kind of problem solving that an OT could do with you. These are some other like OT topics to consider that you could work on with your OT, or if you've never done OT, maybe this inspires you to find one. Fatigue and low energy in general is something that I hear a lot from folks with Parkinson's. And this can, again, be for many reasons. It can be because of overdoing it and being tired for that reason. Low dopamine in the brain itself can cause low energy. And something that I really like to look into with folks is kind of what type of fatigue and low energy are we experiencing? So for example, if someone is feeling tired and sleepy after a long day, then that's probably tiredness and fatigue, and rest is what's needed. However, if someone is feeling low energy, maybe apathetic and sleepy, and it's 10 a.m. and not much has happened yet, to me, that kind of sends off a flag of, I think this might be Parkinson's related fatigue. And what we need are actually dopamine boosters, right? We actually need to move our body, maybe turn up some music, do something fun and rewarding, get some fresh air. And so that can be, really rewarding to explore that with a client so that they have their own personalized energy management plan, almost like a decision tree of knowing what kinds of tools would help me most right now. And also just identifying what you would like to do for rest. I think that can be tough in itself. Because when I think about the big four from the foundations of OT: work, play, rest, sleep. Work is anything productive. We all have things that we need to do, right? What's my other one? Play, right? We know that we need to socialize, engage, find joy, find fun. Sleep, we know, is important, but rest is that tricky one that can kind of fall through the cracks. Because if we think, oh, I guess I nap for rest, well, that's sleep. So what do we do to rest? And, sometimes it's, oh, I browse on the internet or I scroll on my phone, which is fine in moderation, but very rarely do we feel super amazing and rejuvenated after being on our devices for a long time. So that in itself could be really rewarding, is to just figure out, like, what do I even like to do to restore? Because it's going to be different for everyone. The last couple ones kind of go into, I think, our next slide on cognition, but avoiding multitasking. I can go into this more later if anyone's interested. It's very different than dual tasking. So we're trying to avoid the multitasking and rushing, probably most commonly when we're trying to get out of the house to get somewhere on time. That can really ramp up fatigue. And it can lead to cognitive fatigue. Right. So OTs can also help if you're noticing any cognitive changes. And again, cognitive changes could be happening from Parkinson's itself, and it could be happening from other lifestyle factors, other comorbidities maybe. We don't think as well when we're hungry, thirsty, upset, didn't sleep well. So sometimes working on cognition means going back to those topics. But OTs can also help come up with very individualized practical strategies that fit with you, right? We know that not everything is a one size fits all. And so I think a lot of what OT is taking something that you could Google, but making it really fit to your needs and what you like. Fine motor, this is probably, I think, what OT is most well known for. And hopefully after today, if you weren't familiar with OT, you have a wider scope of that. But fine motor is a big part of OT, and it's something that can really be impacted by Parkinson's, whether it's because of tremor, maybe changes to your speed and dexterity, or just the coordination of your fingers, your hands. Stiffness too is something that can get in the way. So OTs can help with the rehab of that by giving you exercises, stretches, speed exercises, strength exercises for your hands. But we can also help with the adaptive compensatory things. Like I love these choppers that I have right here pictured. It can help if you're really just trying to get dinner on the table and you need something chopped up. And handwriting too is a big piece. OTs can help you again with rehab, but also with compensatory things. Navigating the home and community safely. This is where I really love to collaborate with my PTs that I work closely with. But OTs can really help when it comes to those very like functional activity-based movements throughout the day. So whether it is getting in and out of the car, getting in and out of bed, or just being able to like shift positions in bed to get comfortable. We can help with home environment changes, like grab bars and supports to, get on and off the toilet or on and off the couch. And we can also help with safety and emergency planning, which is something that I always like to think about before anything might happen. So we can build more on this too. I have just some prompts for how we can apply more than zero to things like exercise, stress, and sleep. But I think we can use those if needed, but I wanted to leave plenty of time for any Q&A. So I'm happy to go back to any of the slides that you saw, or just any questions unrelated to the slides. And this is my email too, if you have something that pops up into your brain after the webinar today too. So thank you. I'm gonna stop share for now, but I can bring them back if needed.
Malia, thank you so much. That was really, it really, I think, gave us a broader perspective of even for us for referrals for occupational therapy. You were right that a lot of our referrals may be like with something specific like the hand, but there is actually so much that an occupational therapist can help a Parkinson's patient. And you did mention a lot of the lifestyle recommendations that we do encourage our patients. I wanted to start with something that we don't talk about a lot too, which was rest and play. We certainly talk about sleep, nutrition, a lot more, and exercise a lot more. So can you talk to us a little bit more about play and rest? I really love that, and I'm glad you included something like that because we don't do enough of it, and I think it certainly adds in the quality of life for patients too.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm so glad that this was helpful to broaden the scope, because I think OT in general has such a wide scope because we're working with people across the lifespan and everyone's going to have different occupations that are impacted. So it's really broad, but an OT's job is to figure out what are your specific ones. And if yours are rest and play, hopefully you can take something from this. yeah, play is so important. Right. We're big fans of fun, right? Vitamin F, if we want to be cheesy. And it's important for so many things. It's not just simply about having fun, but it's about, even more important than that is like mental health, right? Maybe it means social health as well. Play is helpful for physical movement too. We know that folks move with better quality when they're having fun and not super internally focused on, am I moving this limb exactly how I need to be and shifting my weight exactly? We know that people just move more fluidly when they're enjoying themselves. So it's for movement too. And cognition. Play is so good for our brains. And I think sometimes we forget because life is tough. Managing all of your healthcare and just everything with Parkinson's is tough. And it can be kind of a long time before we're like, well, when was the last time I had fun? Right. And it can look so different for everyone. It might be watching your favorite comedy show, or it might be just calling up a friend who consistently makes you laugh. It could be playing a game with your family. It could be exploring a new hobby and being okay with being bad at it. Right. I'm terrible at embroidery, but I do it anyway because it just is something to explore and be playful with. Right. And I think that's what an OT can really do is, find what your version of play is. And even if it means just finding one activity that is playful for you, that's fantastic. That's all we need, right, to get started. And I think peer support too is really helpful, right? Asking other folks like, what are you doing for fun? What are you doing for play? Fun things to challenge your brain and your body. And bringing it back to what you mentioned too, Giselle, rest. As I mentioned for Parkinson's, energy management isn't always about resting and kicking back and not moving and not doing something. Sometimes managing energy is about leaning in and doing an activity because our brain is really just needing kind of that dose of dopamine, right? So play can also be helpful with managing just bouts of low energy or apathy as well.
Right.
Uh,
Um,
yeah.
I'm really grateful for that. Like I said, we don't talk about those things enough. And everything becomes prescriptive for patients. And this can be really burdensome sometimes for patients. It becomes too much. Where sometimes patients feel like their life revolves around all these prescriptions around it. So making sure that you incorporate something that you enjoy doing, that gives you that energy. And you're right, it can be as simple as trying a new hobby, or maybe dancing around at home too. Dancing to your own tune, that
Yep.
is definitely something that's fun for you, and it doesn't have to be any formal movement. Just going with the flow and the vibration of the music can be very fulfilling, and actually can increase energy too. So thank you so much for that. I wanted to remind our participants that you can send us questions in the chat. There's a Q&A box too, that if you have any questions for Malia today, certainly let us know. Another thing that I see with our Parkinson's patients is that a lot of them have issues with sleep too.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's not just the falling asleep, it's the staying asleep. Any thoughts on those, and what strategies can they use to make sure that they enhance or optimize their sleep?
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much about sleep. I think with what you mentioned with having trouble staying asleep, something that I really like to problem solve with folks is a plan for what to do when you wake up and you can't fall asleep. I think number one is unless there's another reason you've got to take a medication or something, I recommend not looking at the clock. Because I don't know anybody who has ever woken up in the middle of the night, looked at the clock, and been relieved. It's never good news. And so if you can turn your clock facing away from you, put your phone face down, that is ideal. And if you've woken up And just without looking at the clock, you intuitively feel like, I think I've been awake for 10, 15 minutes. I think I'm trouble having or falling asleep. I like to recommend that people, if possible, safely get out of bed. And this comes back to this concept called conditioned arousal, which is just a fancy way of saying when we spend time in bed awake, our brain and our body starts to see the bed as the place where we are awake. Right. So as much as possible, if we can reduce the time that we spend in bed awake, sometimes tossing and turning, that's ideal. So if you can get out of bed, some folks feel that they can safely move to another room, or maybe a chair in the room next to the bed. Or sometimes if you don't feel safe moving out of bed, sometimes maybe just sitting up in bed, right? Just changing your positioning a little bit so that your body knows that the bed is just for sleep, right? And then that's where we can figure out, what are you going to do, right? Maybe it means that you have a little book light and you read for a little bit without looking at the time. You're like, yeah, I'm ready to try again, right? And you try. Maybe it means listening to music and doing some stretches that feel really good for you. Maybe it means hanging out with a pet, right? So that's really where you can come up with your individualized plan, so that we're not perpetuating this connection that our brain and body might make with our bed being a place where we just toss and turn, right? And another big one too is sleep wind down. I think we're all super familiar with general sleep hygiene, right? But also having a routine to really wind your body down for the day and brain for the day can be effective to not just help you fall asleep, but also stay asleep. Yeah.
Thank you very much. We have a few questions in the chat, but before
Okay.
I ask those questions, I wanted to just in relation to sleep, because you did mention to the effect of, the sleep strategy does not only start around the winding down period when you're about to fall asleep, but actually starts in the morning. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's
So
a really great one. That's a really great one that we don't talk about a lot. So many times when we talk about sleep hygiene, we just talk around the bedtime timing. But I think you said a very important point, because it's about when you wake up in the morning too. So please talk to us a little bit about that.
yeah, definitely. That I think a big concept, it's called sleep drive, sometimes called sleep pressure. And this is the concept of as we go through our day and we engage in activities. I like to think of it as like a marble jar, right? As you do things in the day, you're adding marbles to the jar, and hopefully by the end of the day, the jar is full.
Uh-huh.
And that means that we are sleepy enough. We've spent enough energy to adequately fall asleep and stay asleep. And when I say activity, that could be physical, it could be cognitive, it could be social, it could be a self-reflective emotional thing. It's just about engaging activities, and everybody's sleep drive will be different compared to another person, or maybe at different seasons in your life. An Olympic athlete probably has to do a whole lot more physical activity marbles than I would have to do to be adequately sleepy at night, as an example. And so I think, sleep right before bed is, I would agree, that's really where a lot of the focus is, even in OT, but it can open up a lot of opportunity and empowerment to think, okay, I also have some control of what I do during the day if I'm having trouble with my sleep. I think those are the big ones. And also, if you're having trouble with sleep, starting your wind down anywhere from 1 to 3 hours before bedtime, I think can really communicate to the nervous system that it's time to wind down, because sleep is a reflex, right? So just like all of us can't sit here and try to make ourselves sneeze, we can't make ourselves fall asleep. That's called sleep effort, right? So higher sleep effort does not necessarily mean higher risk of falling asleep, or not risk, higher odds of falling asleep. And so I think all we can do for sleep is set up our internal environment, right? Get our nervous system as regulated and happy and calm as possible. and our external environment. So things like our sensory environment, and just the activities that we engage in before bed.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your answers because this is really going to be helpful for our patients. Before I ask some of the questions, there was one question regarding um um the episodes in the webinar. Just a reminder, these are recorded episodes, and usually our episodes are going to be uploaded in the website. The new episodes are uploaded in about 2 weeks. So make sure to go back to the website if you want to hear, just re-listen to the episodes or re-watch it. It's all our episodes are going to be in our website. One of the questions is, you just mentioned the sensory strategies. William mentioned sensory strategies to boost dopamine. What are examples of those strategies?
Yeah, I love sensory strategies. So my guess is that every single person here has used sensory strategies before, intentionally or not intentionally. So when we think of the sensory system, right, it's what we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, movement, right, our vestibular system. And that's how we perceive our world around us, right? That's how we experience our world. So that's the sensory system. A sensory strategy is how we use our sensory system, kind of hack. I know that word is overused, but how we hack our sensory system to modulate our nervous system. So I'll give you an example. Let's say that this is my baseline and I'm feeling kind of agitated and anxious and up, right? I might tap into my sensory system to do things to calm me, to ground me, bring me back down, like maybe shutting off some really bright lights, right, for eyes, maybe either getting away from a lot of loud noise or putting on some calming music, maybe using some essential oils or getting some fresh air, right? Maybe making a hot cup of tea. So all these things that can kind of bring us down. On the other hand, I might be kind of hanging out down here one day where I'm feeling kind of apathetic or sleepy, bored, sad. And I might use my sensory system to kind of bring me back up, right? I might turn on some upbeat music that puts me in a good mood. I might drink some cold water, right? Or lemonade, something with a pucker, right? I might open up the blinds, turn on some lights to stimulate my eyeballs. So those are sensory strategies. And I think all of us use those maybe without having called it sensory strategies in the past. But I think that's really where the empowerment is recognizing what sensory strategies work well for you and using them earlier than not. Having your items with you, right? Whether it's earplugs, earbuds, essential oils, just being more prepared and having more intentionality around them can be super empowering.
I like that word, the intentionality of it, because you're right. These are strategies that we may know, but we have not named. But now, just from this talk, this is something that can be very useful for a lot of our patients, and they could potentially like use these strategies in very practical ways that can really help with either calming their nervous system or actually activating them if they're more on the apathetic side. So this is definitely something that is going to be helpful. There's a question here about how is playing an instrument like a guitar or singing helpful for PD?
Oh, wow. I love that. Like so many things. Fine motor, right? So I think the fine motor practice, like that's probably a lot more fun than, I mean, I don't get me wrong, I love therapy and I give a lot of therapy exercises, but if you do play an instrument, that's probably a lot more fun than doing therapy exercises, right? So I think it can be helpful for dexterity, for strength. It is also potentially a mood and stress coping activity. Sure, if you're learning a new instrument and it's frustrating, right, might need to integrate some stress coping there. But for the most part, if it's something that is playful, right, it can be really helpful for those non-motor symptoms like fatigue, tiredness, low mood, stress. It can be a sensory strategy as well, from many different perspectives, from getting the feedback of a guitar pressed against your body, the sound. Yeah, I think music, just meaningful activities are big. And I should say that's where OT originated in 1917, was using these rewarding, engaging activities to help improve physical and mental health. So I think anytime you can bring it back to an activity like that, that's great. It's going to have physical and mental benefits.
Malia, I'm not sure if this is something you wanted to comment on. I know this is in relation to occupational therapy. There are certainly driving specialists that are in occupational therapists. So but there is a question with regards to driving. So more than zero is great. I really felt that was a great strategy. Anything more than zero, but some activities may require going to zero at some point. Please talk about driving and what factors would indicate it's time to stop.
Yeah, great question. I think a couple pieces with that. So, as OTs, it is not up to us whether or not it's a good time to stop driving. I think that's really up to you, your family, and your neurologist to make that call. However, I think that OTs can be helpful in activity analysis, right? That PEO model. So looking at, okay, what factors are you coming into driving with? What are the supports and the barriers of driving? Environmentally, what's going on, right? Which could be, is it daytime? Is it nighttime? Is it a far distance or a short distance? And help you analyze all those factors so that you can self-reflect on that and also bring it to your neurologist. There are also, as Giselle mentioned, driving rehab and assessment specialist. And so there are some centers that have really awesome technology where you can be in a driver's simulator and get some immediate feedback on if you're driving safely or not so much. So I think I wish there were more of those scattered throughout, but there's some really great ones in the LA area if people are coming in from LA, I think. So yeah, I think talking to your neurologist about a referral to a place like that could be a good first step.
It certainly is. And for those who are interested, we actually had a separate discussion with regards to driving. It was also done by one of our occupational therapists who is a driving specialist. So you might want to go back on that episode in particular. It might answer a lot of your questions with regards to safe driving. And you are correct, Malia, where they can go with you actually in your car and make those evaluations. So for those that are interested, please go back to that episode. It's going to be in the website with regards to safe driving. That was with Purnima Karia, our occupational therapist and driving specialist too. One of the things that you brought up too was writing. It certainly is known that a lot of our patients, especially when they start, they notice that their penmanships change. A lot of them will really have this very small penmanships. Some patients may even opt not to write because of the difficulty where they're unable to understand their own handwriting, and even others too. So can you talk about that a little bit, or is there like strategies that they can do to improve?
Yeah, handwriting can be really tough. And it depends. Is it tremor? Is it more that bradykinesia, slowness of movement, or coordination, right? And so I think OT can come at it from an adaptive standpoint. Like, can we experiment with different adaptive pens, right? Weighted pens, wider diameter pens, different types of ink flows, right? Can we experiment with the actual instrument itself? We can also assist with some fine motor exercises. And this will really depend on what's going on with you and your body, right? Maybe there's stiffness, and so we really focus on stretches, things to loosen up. Maybe it's the coordination, so we have some kind of dexterity practices, like guitar is a great one. Also, I really like to think about the whole body, right? Writing is not just you glue your wrist to a paper and it's all your fingers. It's really a whole arm postural activity. So I think finding where challenges might lie and giving some exercises to address that can be helpful. Whether it means working on postural stability, or maybe it means, putting a bolster behind you and stabilizing your arm for support, right? And also looking at other lifestyle factors. So medication timing, right? So maybe it means that you're timing, writing a card to someone when you're on. Stress and level of stress can really impact writing quality as well. So maybe we're integrating some music that feels good while you're writing, or some breathing techniques. And we also can help with technology too, right? Getting comfortable with dictation on your phone, on your tablet, on your computer, and seeing how you can use that in different activities like emails, texts, and whatnot. So
You did mention and you did mention stress reduction. We do certainly talk to our patients about that, and that certainly is one of the issues, because it definitely exacerbates the symptoms of Parkinson's too, as you already alluded to. And thank you, by the way, for doing those exercises with us. I did it along with you, and I think they're good strategies, not just for Parkinson's patients, but actually for everyone to take up a few times during the day to relax and actually correct your posture, plus adding in those movements. I like that strategy actually of, not just a formal exercise, but doing this movements throughout the day actually, because this little movements, it is cumulative too. At the end of the day, you're doing this not just an exercise of an hour that you do throughout the day and you're sitting the rest of the day, right? It's moving through your day. So that was, I'm grateful for you for showing us some easy strategies that we can incorporate for our day. One thing before I'll ask us, we'll close, is that you did mention apps. Was there apps that you thought was helpful in stress reduction?
Yeah, so I think one of my favorites is Insight Timer. I love it because it's free. And I think a lot of them unfortunately have paywalls, but Insight, knock on wood, has always been free and is continuing to be free. It started as just a meditation timer for something less abrasive than our phone alarms. But now they've really built it out, and there are, sleep meditations, anxiety meditations, sleep stories, body scans. There's really anything you search, it's probably there. So I love that one. Calm and Headspace are really great quality as well. And one of my clients with PD actually just told me about BrainTap. I haven't looked at it myself, but there's a big focus on cognitive brain games and activities, as well as meditation. So I haven't vetted that one, but my client really likes it and has kept up with it for a long time. So
What was the name of that?
BrainTap.
BrainTap. Okay, I will look into that. We love Insight Timer here at the Brain Health Center too. It's actually one of the top apps that we do recommend for sure. And you're right about the free aspect of it, but also there's so many things, not just stress reduction. There's a lot of the meditations. There's a lot of even like a lot of yoga nidra for sleep too, that can be very helpful. So definitely that is an app that we strong indoors too. We're a minute left. So Malia, I just want to thank you very much for being here today and giving us so many pearls that can be useful for practical everyday activities that can be helpful for our patients. But on the last minute, I just wanted to give you the floor if there was any last words that you felt may be helpful in closing.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I was really excited to be here today, and I appreciate it. I love talking about this stuff. So, I think one little thing, kind of in relation to more than zero. I love what you mentioned, Giselle, about how it's cumulative. I know I can speak personally. It takes a lot of effort and drive to do a whole, 20-minute meditation or a 30-minute exercise, but a minute here and there, 3 minutes here and there really makes a difference, not just for, physical health, but just overall wellness. And so I think that's one of the most important things that I like to offer. So thank you so much,
Thank you
everyone.
very much. Thank you so much, Malia, for being here today. Thank you, everyone, for coming in and joining us today. We hope that these are things that you can incorporate with your everyday activities that can be very helpful for you. Just a reminder, all our webinars are recorded. They are going to be on the website probably in 2 weeks, but the previous ones are already there too. We will see you back in April. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of the week. Stay warm and dry for sure. Take care. Thank you, Malia.
Thank you so
Bye.
much. Bye-bye.